Pat Rafter, I'd like to play like him. Even Pat Cash, when he was at his peak, wasn't too bad.
And what a victory in set match for the teenage sensation Lleyton Hewitt.
But what a triumph for this remarkable Australian.
Australia, Lleyton Hewitt.
Do you remember the first time you picked up a racket and hit a tennis ball?
I don't remember the first time. I remember roughly when I went into my first group coaching sessions, which were in Seaside Tennis Club. My parents were just playing local tennis on a Saturday afternoon, and they put me into a group lessons, really, and that was the first time that I can actually remember going to the courts and hitting balls in group lessons, and then the following year I started having one-on-one coaching.
Did you fall in love with the game immediately?
I don't think so. I think that was probably the one thing I loved about Australian rules football, was the team aspect of it, and especially training-wise. I really enjoyed training in a group, and sometimes tennis is a very individual sport a lot of the time, and you're trying to work on certain areas of your game, and I think that's why I really enjoyed AFL as a kid growing up, because I felt like I was around my mates probably a little bit more than tennis.
So you're 13 when you gave up the footy, you're at Emmanuel College. Does that mean at 13 you thought, I can make a life and a living out of tennis?
Yeah, I came back when I was 13 from a month away on the European clay courts, and I had to sacrifice missing a chunk of football to go over there, because that was during the winter in Australia to play the European summer tennis schedule. I was in a junior Australian team, and I went over there and won 3 out of the 4 tournaments on a surface that I'd never played on before. I was ranked #1 in the world for my age at the time, and that's when I came home and sort of had to start thinking, well, I'm, you know, playing okay at this sport now. I really had to knuckle down and obviously take the opportunity that presented itself.
Pat Rafter, I'd like to play like him. Even Pat Cash, when he was at his peak, wasn't too bad. It's just his behaviour was a bit let down.
In 1998, you're still at school, you're 16 years of age. You beat Andre Agassi in the semis of the SA Open, or the Next Generation, and then take care of Stoltenberg. You basically announced yourself to the tennis world, and I think tennis world was surprised. Were you?
Yeah, I was surprised. One, because I went into the tournament. I was a last-minute wild card to get in. I really just wanted to go out there, give it my all, but wasn't expecting to win. I wanted to put on a good show and show that I could compete against, you know, top-ranked players in the world.
And what a victory in set match for the teenage sensation Lleyton Hewitt.
I never even thought about my wildest dreams possibly holding up the trophy at the end of the week, and it was kind of like just a fairy tale.
He didn't really look in the match at certain points, and he just hung in there and hung in there and hung in tough. And before you knew it, all of a sudden he had a match point and it went his way.
Yeah, now I have to have a pretty good think about it, and no, I don't think I'll be going back to school this year.
But when did you actually believe within yourself that you were good enough?
Oh, I think when I was around 13, 14 and I won those tournaments overseas, and I beat a lot of the top European and South American players at the time. And then, you know, the following year when, you know, as a 15-year-old to qualify for the Australian Open and become the youngest player ever to qualify for it, that was a tournament that I always dreamt of playing once in my life as a kid growing up. It was my favourite tournament. I used to go to it every year and watch it. And out in the court in the first round against a guy named Sergi Biguera, that's won 2 French Open titles. Yeah, it was special times, and a time where, you know, you sort of had to sit back and pinch yourself, if, you know, ask yourself the question if this is really happening to you.
He'll be quietly pleased, but just slightly disappointed perhaps.
Once you get out there, it's just playing another player. No, I was actually hoping I played Sampras, but...
You're about to play in your 20th Australian Open. You've only had 34 birthdays. I mean, do you find that a bizarre scenario?
Yeah, it wasn't something I ever thought about, and then I started getting to 17, 18 in a row as well, where I actually haven't missed an Australian Open. And I haven't always been 100% fit going in, but I always did everything to get on the court for an Australian Open.
When you think of the Australian Open, what's your favourite memory that doesn't involve you?
For me, it's the year Wilander beat Cash in the final.
88.
8-6 in the fifth. It was the first time it had moved from Kooyong on the grass to the rebound ace at Melbourne Park. But Cashy, obviously, he was the biggest Australian player for me growing up.
And that's Wilander wins it.
I used to hang over the rafters at Melbourne Park just waiting to hopefully get a signed headband off Cashy one day. And Mats Wilander was one of my favourite players growing up as well. Just his game style, how he went about his business. So for me, that was probably one of the biggest matches.
And your favourite moment that does involve you at the Aussie Open?
You know, I'd like to say the final Sunday of 2005, but being a part of that was an awesome moment.
Lleyton Hewitt.
You know, walking out for a final of the Australian Open, but obviously disappointing to have lost. So in some ways, I'd say probably the quarter-final, beating Nalbandian on Australia Day in 5 sets. And then the semi-final, beating Andy Roddick in a tight 4-set match. And just at the end of that match, knowing that you've got the opportunity to play in an Australian Open final.
At a long last, an Aussie in the final of the Australian Open.
But when you think about the Safin final, what comes to mind? What emotions?
Frustration that, you know, you're not able to close it out, I guess, and hold up the trophy. But then again, I have no regrets because I absolutely gave everything I had. Those 2 weeks, I just rode a massive wave. The emotion that I felt from the crowd and from the whole Australian public for those 2 weeks was just massive. And I look back on it and I'm very proud of that year.
If I could transport you back and take you to the moment you enjoyed most in your tennis career, where do you think you are?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. Winning that match in the Davis Cup against Roger would be up there, purely because Davis Cup meant so much to me. Roger was the best player in the world at the time. I had just lost first round as defending champion of Wimbledon. He went on and won that title. I had my back against the wall. It was what I lived for. To somehow find a way to claw my way back in front of my home fans with your captain and coach and your teammates sitting on the sidelines. I watched Pat Cash do it against Mikael Pernfors in the '86 Davis Cup final at Kooyong so many times. And for me, somehow to be in a similar position to that, I'd say that's one of the greatest.
I don't know how many times I've watched Pat Cash. The whole time when I was 2 sets to love down, I ended up getting out of that third. I was just thinking of that match.
This remarkable young Australian poised to become the 21st Australian to win a Wimbledon title.
So to Wimbledon, you're a student of the game, you always love the game. The Australian Open you attended, Wimbledon you dreamt about. 40 love on the serve, Nalbandian on the ropes. You serve a double fault. Take me through mentally what happens before you serve again.
For some reason, I hadn't serve volleyed the whole tournament, and I tried serve volleying a first and second serve at 40 love and hit a double fault. And that's when I really said to myself, get back to basics, go back to your A game. And that's when I got the serve in and stayed back and just grinded Nalbandian into the ground on that last point. That was my mindset the whole time was, you know, I guess going out there and not believing, you know, it was always 1 point at a time. And I think throughout my career, I was always very good at doing that.
But that's it. But what a triumph for this remarkable Australian to have ended Wimbledon to the US Open title he won so convincingly last September.
Back to the US Open final. Match point versus Sampras. Take us through the emotions.
It was It was an amazing day. I knew I was playing really well. I was very confident going in, but I was the underdog as well. And playing a guy like Pete, a guy that I looked up to, at the time, he was the greatest tennis player in our era. I just felt like I couldn't put a foot wrong. Every shot that I wanted to come off was working. And, he had one of the greatest serves in the game, and I felt like I had that much time to return it. And that's how I ended up winning on match point, was hitting a clean return winner past him as he tried to serve volley. And all of a sudden, the emotions that you feel is, it's hard to believe. You've won a Grand Slam.
Youngest #1 in the world. What made you the best? There's no huge weapon. Mental strength, #1. What else?
Yeah, obviously I was mentally tough out there. I believed in myself, which was, I think, a massive key at such a young age. My return to serve, my court speed was probably second to none at the time as well, which really helped. And I didn't overplay. I played to my strengths, which was, the biggest key for me. Even when I first started playing on grass, at the start, I felt like I had to play like a typical grass court player and try and hit and come into the net and serve volley and change my game. Whereas then I sat back and you watch the likes of Andre Agassi win on grass, and I actually started believing that I just play my game and let them try and beat me at it.
You've been world #1, 2 Davis Cup wins, a couple of majors. Which brought you the greatest sense of satisfaction, do you think, at the time?
It's a tough one. I'd probably say winning Wimbledon. Only because Wimbledon, I think, for any kid growing up, and especially in Australia, I used to wake up, during June and July in the middle of the night to sit up and watch Wimbledon. I dreamt of just walking in the gates of the All England Club one day.
This is the most beautiful moment in a tennis player's life. Winning the Wimbledon championship for the very first time.
I never thought I'd get close enough to actually see the trophy in a cabinet, let alone on centre court holding it up and kissing it. It's an amazing accomplishment and something that, makes all the hard work running around, the West Lakes Football Park ovals there, early mornings, it makes it all worthwhile.
The hat back to front. When did it first get reversed?
Yeah, I did it a bit in juniors. It was kind of a bit of a phase there, I think, when I was kind of in juniors, and I don't really know. I think nearly every junior in my age group did it.
Wasn't a practical thing to keep the hair back?
No, it certainly wasn't. And then I played a night match against Scott Draper in that first round of Adelaide in '98, and I won that match. And pretty much every match from then on, I wore it backwards because that got me the win in that first tournament, and I wasn't going to change it.
The ponytail, any chance of it resurfacing?
No. No chance.
You've had such a fantastic year from 12 months ago, US Open, world #1, and now this. What next?
I don't know. I should retire and go and play Aussie rules footy, I reckon.
Most ties, most number of wins. Why does Davis Cup mean so much to you?
I think it comes back to that team situation and what I missed out on by having to give Australian rules football up at an early age. I love going out there and playing for your mates, and that was my way of getting that. Plus, I'm so passionate about our country.
It's out!
Lleyton Hewitt said I was hurting at the start, and, he came out and played some great tennis, and Nick just said, mate, you got to raise the bar now.
He'd run out of gas, and he went back inside his body and produced another effort, which was just superhuman.
I was so lucky to have two of the best guys teach me what Davis Cup and representing your country's all about, and John Newcombe and Tony Roach when I first came into the fold.
Oh, that's just tremendous tennis from the back of the court. Yes.
And I saw it as an absolute privilege every time I put the gold jacket on and stood on the court and listened to the national anthem before a tie. Yeah, they're the moments that I'm going to miss the most.
You debuted for Australia at 18, 54-18 record. You're now the 7th Davis Cup captain. How do you try and manufacture the culture that you grew up in and get young Australians to love playing Davis Cup again?
Well, I think all the Australian tennis players love playing Davis Cup and they enjoy being out there and in a team atmosphere. And it's about keeping that culture together and keep it going. And I'm fortunate dealing with the young guys that I have a great relationship with and we have a mutual respect for each other. And that's why I feel like I'm the right person for that job now moving forward. And, you know, I think we have the guys now for the next 5 or 10 years to be a dominant force in that competition.
Family. How has Beck influenced your career?
Oh, she's just, she's been like a rock to me. Obviously, you have the highs and lows of being a professional athlete. And some of the tougher times for me are coming back from surgeries, and especially, you know, in the last probably 7 years or so when I've, you know, had 5 surgeries, especially the foot surgeries, because you start doubting whether you will actually be able to come back. And just to be able to have a person to be able to talk it out with. And, you know, she really is my soulmate, and we go through absolutely everything together. And, you know, I couldn't be prouder to have her alongside me.
There's been enormous fascination in your relationship. Every time I look at a new idea, I fear the worst. How have the tabloids put pressure on your marriage?
It doesn't put any pressure. Beck and I haven't had one argument ever.
No, but that's my point. You look at these things and you think...
We don't look at it. It's as simple as that. No, it doesn't. Every week there's more rubbish. You know, it does get more and more silly over time. But, yeah, it's certainly something that I would hope the public, you know, see through it and don't read into it.
Cruz, 7 now?
Yes.
Would you like him to play professionally if he had the ability? Is it a world that you would love your family to enter into?
Yeah, absolutely. If that's something that he wanted to do and he was good enough to make that decision, yeah, I'd absolutely fully back it.
What would Lleyton at 34 tell Lleyton at 12? What have you learned along the way that you could pass on to a junior?
I think the biggest thing is to enjoy your tennis as much as possible. Even though I have played for 20-odd years, it does go quickly. And, you know, I was very fortunate at the start of my career to come on and have very early success and be in the Davis Cup final 4 times in 5 years, my first 5 years on tour. And you kind of take it for granted in some ways. And I think it's about really enjoying those moments that you are out there. In terms of what's actually made me a great player,
and this was one of those matches.
You know, my never say die attitude, I think, is one of my biggest strengths. And if you can go out there, and you might not have to be the most talented player with the biggest weapons, but if you keep turning up and doing the 1%ers all the time, then things are going to turn your way.
What do you reckon the biggest misconception is about who Lleyton Hewitt is?
Probably how I am on the court to how I am off the court in some ways. You know, I'm probably a more shy guy than a lot of people would expect, I guess, from going out and playing in front of 15, 20,000 screaming fans and feeling that, you know, total control out in the court. Out there doing something that I love and comes very natural to me in tennis. But walking down the street in front of a whole lot of people, you know, I prefer not to.
When you walk out onto Rod Laver Arena, when you get announced by Craig Willis and you walk out, is there a better moment than that? Full house?
No, it's hard. I get goosebumps still now. When you walk out and you have your 5-minute warm-up and you're trying to still soak up the atmosphere out there as the crowd's sort of building for the start of the match. And, you know, then you hear them announce your name and from Australia, and they say your name and you look up to the crowd and sort of give them a wave. I get goosebumps every time.
I've heard Mick Jagger talking about retirement. He said, I could give up the chicks, probably the drugs, the grog, but I couldn't give up the fans. What he gets from them, he feeds off. Is that what you'll miss most?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how you replace that in some ways. And I guess for me, going into that new role of Davis Cup captain, I'm still around that. And you know, will still enjoy being out there in battle with these young guys as well. But it's about trying to get them to perform at their best out there, you know, in pressure situations. But, you know, the fans, you know, they give you everything. You know, they turn up and support you. Can't thank them enough for all the years.
If you're going to play one more match in your life, you at your prime and your opponent at his prime, who would you want to play and on what court?
I'd say Roger and, you know, the final in the Australian Open.
So what do you think you'll be feeling when you're shaking hands with whoever it is, your last opponent? It'll be on Rod Laver Arena. Hopefully it's the last match of the Open. How do you think you'll be as you walk to the chair?
I really don't know. And I don't think it's something you can prepare yourself for until, you know, you don't know how your emotions are going to feel out there on possibly that last match. And it's different as well, because if I can find a way to deal with it and actually go out there and play some good tennis, then, you know, the fairy tale keeps going as well.
Standing ovation. He's broken so many records, fought so many battles, and won so many matches.